So my name is Kacie, and I'm a senior. I'm a double major in PR and advertising. I'm 23, and I'm going to be talking to you about my study abroad summer trip to Italy. So basically, just a little bit about myself, as previously requested by Ali. Just your average. Well, there's nothing average about me, but just your typical college student. I like to have fun. I'm originally from California. Rudy always called me LA because he couldn't remember what my name was. I just love being near water, and I enjoy playing volleyball and watching football like everybody else. And I got this really interesting marketing internship right now, with our keynote speaker. And so I'm just kind of learning a lot about industry that I had no idea about. So it's fun. Basically the reason why I went to Italy is because I needed an elective for graduation. And of course, like all great students at UTA, you think you're going to graduate, and 2 semesters later, here you are. So one of the things stopping me was that I needed an upper level elective or something of that matter. And they were just like, you can take whatever you want. So I was looking, there's a bunch of classes that I didn't want to take, and I thought it was an art class, freshman, sophomore year for an elective, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. It was like digital design, but I learned a lot about InDesign and stuff like that. So, once I got to Roby's class, I felt like, I knew more than some of the other people, but it was hard and I hated it. So I didn't want to take something that was going to be hard, and I was a senior, so I was trying to be kind of lazy. And someone had told me about this study abroad program, and I was kind of like, well, I'm a senior, it's a little silly to wait this long. And so I ended up just walking by Miss Whittier's class one day, and I saw a sign that said, study abroad. And I was like, well, maybe. And I really just thought about it, and I went and talked to one of the study abroad advisors, like a million miles from campus. Not really, but when you're walking, it's ridiculous. And, she was crunching the numbers. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have any of this money. And I don't know how I'm going to do this, And so I just kind of put it on the back burner. I knew I didn't have the cash. I wanted an awesome graduation present. I was like, there's no way my parents are going to buy me anything for graduation and pay for this trip. So I just kind of left it alone. And then I got this email about a scholarship that they were doing only for comm majors and only for study abroad and only for the summer. It couldn't have been more perfect. It was ridiculous. And so I just took all three of those things as a sign. I said, I'm just going to ask my mom. I'm going to tell her. And of course, she was super jealous, and she always wanted to do it when she was in school. And so she decided to let me go. I don't think she really thought how much it was actually going to cost at first. And so as the numbers started piling up, she was like, wait a minute. So I applied. And, I had a few professors, write recommendations for me on my behalf. And they were all beautiful, and I really appreciated it. I didn't actually end up getting the scholarship, but I still got to go. And, the lady in the financial aid department actually helped me get some grants and even a loan. So then it helped even more. And everything was really stressful because when I decided to go, it was like super last minute. And the program that I finally picked, which was in Florence, was like the deadline for the payment was in 2 weeks. So I decided, and then I had 2 weeks to come up with all this money. And so things just kind of fell into place, but I was pulling my hair out. And, I actually talked to Rudy about it, and he was telling me, you just got to go for it. It's going to change your life, and you have no idea. And, it was almost as if he didn't think I would be the type of person to do something like that. So he was very shocked, and he made me promise that I was going to look at these Palladian windows. And so, I just got all this positive encouragement, from Campbell and Kim Jones and Rudy, and everybody was just kind of telling me, like, you gotta go. And so I was really scared and really nervous, but at the same time, here were all these professors that I looked up to that were, they had all this faith in me. So I just leaped and I went for it. And it was the summer 2 session. So I was there for about a month. And then I went to Paris for 3 days by myself. And it was really awesome. And I got to see a lot of different cities. So we basically started our trip in Rome. And then I lived, quote unquote, in Florence. That's where my apartment was. And then my roommates and I would go and leave on the weekends. So we would take trains and buses and whatever we could. I mean, sometimes, we'd get on the train that took you to a bus, that took you to a subway. And then once we got out the subway, we'd take cab. I mean, we did whatever. If we had to walk 4 miles, that's what we did. But how often are you there? And you're so close. I mean, you're so far, but you're so close. So it's like, it's one thing for you to be on the other side of the world, and it's another thing for you to be 6 hours away. So, we would get on the train and we went to Pompeii to see the ruins. We went to the island of Capri. And so, of course, we got to see Naples, which is really dirty. I was very terrified. And then I went to Venice because my aunt just happened to be visiting. She was going to London for a business trip, but she just decided to stop and meet me in Venice, which was super cool. And I got to go on the gondola rides and just all these things. It was crazy. It was amazing. And so it was one of those once in a lifetime kind of experiences. The weather, it was hot, obviously, because it was summer, but it still doesn't feel like Texas heat. It's not like a dry, nasty heat. But then at night it's freezing, so it doesn't really matter. But we all slept with our windows open because our AC is a joke and we didn't have heat. But it was nice. I went at a good time. In the winter, I think I'd be a little pissed off, so I was actually kind of happy. The people are just different. It's not like it is back in the States, because people, in Florence anyway, and it might just be Europe altogether, they're very upfront, they're super honest, they're very real about what they're saying, and they mean it, For me, especially, and I think, most Americans, we're very sarcastic, we kind of like, ha ha ha, you look like crap. And they're really like, no, you look like crap, take that off. And it's almost as if you want to be offended, but then it's like, I don't even think I can be because you're so honest. And you can tell that it's genuine. It's not coming from a nasty or ugly place. They're just being real. And I think I really like that. I love that they didn't care a lot. I mean, they cared about themselves. They're presentable and things like that. There's like no fat people. It's just obesity isn't one of those things. And it's probably because they walk 189 miles up a mountain every single day. I mean, old ladies, 1,000 years old. Seriously, we had a lady who was 80 in our apartment building, and she lived on like the 6th floor. And by the way, the bottom ground of your floor, it's not like us where it's like, oh, the first floor is the ground, the floor. No, that's 0. So the first floor really is after you take 3 flights of stairs, then you're on the first floor. So then 5 more flights of stairs after that. And she would climb to the top every day. It was crazy. And so, I mean, I don't mean it like that, but they were just, living day to day. I mean, even the produce, it's so fresh. I remember we went to the store, we bought like $100, €100 worth of groceries for our apartment, and they went bad in 2 days. And it was like, what a waste. We could have kept eating out. We were trying to save money because we just spent it on bars and food every day. So we're like, okay, we'll buy food and then we can still go to the bars because we're eating at home. And it was stupid. But it's just because they don't have any preservatives in their food, They don't inject their animals with hormones. It's all illegal over there. So everything you eat is super fresh. You go to these huge markets that are inside and outside. I mean, you like duck face, squid, eel, an entire pig, prosciutto, mozzarella. I mean, anything you name it, nuts, fruit, veggies. It was crazy. And, so they don't go to the grocery store like we do. If they want a meal, they either go out to eat or they go to the store that day to make it. So they go buy everything they need for that meal. They come home and they cook it. And they do it every day. They just walk to the market, they buy their food and they come back. And, so everything's just like, they just take it one day at a time. And so I think in that regard, it kind of helped me to be less stressed about just simple things. Everyday life kind of didn't seem so hectic or important. It was almost as if time was standing still because I've never just been worry-free, except for money. I worried about the ATMs because I'm like, Mom, please send me more money. But it just was it was like you could finally breathe for a second. I mean, everything was so beautiful. The history was so rich. You didn't have time to stress out. It was insane. How's my Italian? Well, it is terrible. I knew zero Italian. It was funny because everyone, usually goes to the country that they take a foreign language in. I took Spanish and I can't speak that either. So, now I know a little bit of Italian, and I got to France and knew zero French. But, was English commonly spoken? The older people don't really speak English, and if you don't speak Italian, they don't care. It's not like, oh, let me help you understand. Some of the younger people or people who own American bars and stuff like that, they're like, oh, wait, what are you saying? They'll try to figure it out. Or they have like these apps. It's so cute. And so they'll have you like speak into their app or have you type on their phones and stuff. Or, hey, I have a friend that speaks English, and they'll bring him out the back and then, they translate in a circle. But older people are just like, no, I'm sorry. You don't understand me. And they'll just hand you things that you didn't want. And they're like, pay. Now you pay me. Like, I didn't want an orange. I want an apple. I don't care. Here you go. Give me my money. And it's funny. When you go into a restaurant and you don't speak Italian, the first thing, some old lady says to you is, we don't have pizza. No pizza. You're like, I didn't even want pizza. Jeez. So, it's a culture shock for sure, but you get used to it and it becomes part of the fun for sure. How was the food? Oh God, I could talk about food for days. I mean, it's just amazing. It's the freshest pasta, and then they serve it al dente. It's insane. It's so good. And like I said, it's so fresh. I mean, I literally ate pasta every day. I drank wine. I mean, I took wine studies. That was the class I took. So you know how that went. But I drank 3 times a day. I drank wine 3 times a day. By default, one was class. And, I ate pasta every single day. Like, I tried to stop and I would venture out and eat other things. No, I'm going to go back to pasta. And, I mean, I lost 7 pounds. So it might be me walking around. It might be how fresh everything is. Who knows? But the food was amazing. And everywhere we went, it got different and better. And, the seafood when we were in Venice was just, like, ridiculous. And I had prongs. And it was just, so good. I could go back right now. How was the city life and the nightlife? Well, conversation for a different day, Maybe we'll talk about that later, but it was great. We had a lot of fun, and, Italians love to dance, and, they stay up all night, and, we went on some wild adventures that probably weren't super safe, with people we didn't know, but it's cool because, they have like they call them discos. So, you go to the American pub or the American disco and you hang out, and it's cool because they play American music, but it's like Backstreet Boys from 19 whatever. I mean, it's so hilarious. And some places have newer music, it just depends on where you go. And then they have bars where they're real Italian bars, and it's cool too. It's just different. It just depends. And we had a shop that was made out of coffee, and it was like this old man looked like Einstein. It was the coolest bar ever. And he's got this crazy wacky hair, and it's like you have to eat a banana and then suck on an orange peel and then lick these coffee grains and then take this shot. I mean, it's like a whole thing, and they set it on fire, and so it just depends on where you go, that the experience you're going to get. But we quickly learned, because Florence is very small, you could walk from the whole town in like an hour. Not really, but like 4. And it's almost as if you think you're the only like study abroad group because you're surrounded by all these people, and then all of a sudden there's just Americans everywhere. And so there's especially in the summer, I guess, there's a lot of study abroad groups that are going on at different times. And some of them are, not with you have these organizations, they have different groups. And then you have a whole nother organization, a whole nother, and then some school, and then there's like a soccer team. And so when you go out at night, you meet these people because they're at the same bars, and then some of them are in your classes. And so you become friends with people that weren't even in your group or weren't even part of the program you were on, And so I met some people that were from California, and they knew people that I knew that knew my family, and it was crazy. And we're all the way in a totally different country. And I'll never forget, I met this girl, and she had gone to the same college as my cousin. It was Cal State something. And, she was really cool and whatever. And so I go to Paris by myself at the end of my trip. So the trip's over, and I go because, I'm already here, and I really wanted to go. And so I took a train overnight, and I meet this guy at the airport, and American Airlines just shut down for hours. It was so annoying. I'm in this line with this guy, and he's just like super bubbly or whatever. And he happened to be on a study abroad program too, but in Paris. And he was like, yeah, where were you? And I was like, well, I was in Florence. He goes, I had a friend that was in Florence. And I go, really? I said, what does she look like? I might have met her. And he's like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, seriously. I mean, I met all these other girls in these different groups. And he described her to me. And I was like, I know this girl. Her name's Mel. And we partied and hung out like every day. And he was like, shut up. And they were best friends, So it was like, it was a small world in Florence. It was an even small world in France. And I mean, who would have thought? What were the odds, And so it was really cool that way because the people and the nightlife kind of bring you together, and everything looks different. You feel like you're not even in the same place. What experience benefits my education? I just think my study habits overall, kind of improved, and, learning how to deal with professors that have language barriers and things like that, or, other students that are in maybe your group projects, because it's not easy, and you have to realize, I was put in that situation and where I couldn't speak the language and I had no idea where I was going or what I was saying. And then think about them coming to the States, we're like, well, why don't you know English? Like, are you kidding? And so I think I'm much more patient overall in general, just with things. And my schoolwork, I've learned to kind of enjoy school a lot more and just kind of appreciate it. The biggest thing that I'll take away from my trip is just that, well, people told me I act differently. I don't really see it. If you ask my boyfriend, he says that Florence sucked the fun out of me. I'm just like, I don't make as much witty jokes and things like that. But, I think that I just have to go with the flow. I think that's one of the things I really learned is I just need to take a deep breath sometimes and enjoy the things that are around me and appreciate the things that I do have and, like a dryer. I mean, and then sometimes enjoy the things that I don't. I think some of the fun things about life is the amenities that we don't have. I mean, I had nothing in Florence, like we had a dishwasher that barely worked, no toaster, no microwaves. We had a washing machine, but no dryer. I mean, I literally hung my clothes on a clothesline, I ate bread and sandwiches in a park, but it was so beautiful, and I think that I could probably find the same beauty here. It wouldn't be the same, of course, but I need to go out and look for it and appreciate it when it is there and just stop. Sometimes we get so busy with, well, I have to do school and I need to get an internship and, now I'm doing this, but I'm working a full-time job, and that's fine. It's going to get you somewhere eventually, but sometimes you just have to stop and smell the roses and take a day for yourself. I mean, when I was in France, it was more boring. It was great. Don't get me wrong. The Louvre and everything. The Eiffel Tower, I mean, it was beautiful. But in Florence, everything was popping. But in France, in August, the whole city shuts down. The students go home. They leave. All the professors leave. The whole town, like people shut down their stores, the grocery stores, the cafes, everything. Because in August, people just take the whole month off. They just do whatever they want. They go travel. They go see other places. And people literally close their businesses because it costs them more money to stay open than it does to close because no one's there. And so, it's one of those things where they just shut down. They just stop and they do what they need to do. And I know we can't just stop the world like that, but it's a great concept to think about. And, I think it's something everyone should do. How were the tourist attractions? The tourist attractions are just what they sound like. I mean, they're tourist attractions. It's I think the most fun I had were doing things that weren't tourist attractions. I mean, yeah, okay, the Colosseum was great. Obviously the Eiffel Tower was amazing and things like that. But I think some of the most fun I had and some of the most beautiful things I saw were the things you don't see on TV. Or hear about in magazines. You just go out and do them and you find them and you get lost and then you stumble upon the greatest restaurant you've ever been at, or you meet some of the most amazing people you'll never forget. What memory will you savor forever? Well, I'd have to say going to Capri. Kobe Bryant was there at the same time we were. I didn't get to see him, but it was amazing. And we passed J-Lo's yacht, but besides the celebrities, that was probably, we were supposed to go in this big group, and obviously we're already in a group, and we're traveling, we're going on all these other things, but we're going by ourselves. But they have subgroups. They offer other tour guided, things to other kids. And, don't get me wrong, we're all from different parts of the U.S. We don't know each other, but it's still like, it just feels so unauthentic. And so me and my roommates made it a big point to stay away from the group. And it wasn't that we didn't do the things that the group were doing. We'd meet up conveniently, but we didn't go with them. We didn't want to be on the air-conditioned bus that took you right up the mountain. We wanted to walk up it. We don't want to be with a bunch of kids speaking English. We wanted to be challenged and have that language barrier. It just made everything so much more fun, because then you kind of feel like you never left. It's like, oh, you see these beautiful things and you're in the ruins and everything, but you've got a janky tour guide and you've got a bunch of your friends or a bunch of people who speak English and your cell phones. And it was just like, meh. No, and so we would just go out by ourselves, whatever. I mean, we had each other, but it's a lot different with the three of us instead of like 40 other kids. And so I think when we were going to Capri, we had the opportunity to go on this trip with a group, and we didn't. We went by ourselves, and so we had a private boat tour. So we saw some pictures later. I mean, it was like 20 kids on one boat, and they go out and they look at the grotto and da-da-da, but we rent a boat. And, it wasn't super cheap, but we still divided it amongst the three of us, and it was just us. It was three of us and this captain who just fly by the seat of his pants, whatever. Didn't speak a whole lot of English, but he knew how to give a tour. And it's his own personal boat. He just rents it out for people during the summertime. And he's got this radio that plays. And, we're just laying on the front of this boat in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea with the music playing and the wind against our faces. And when we were on the island, right before we got on the boat, we were like, oh, maybe we'll get hungry or maybe we'll get thirsty. We literally go to this cafe. We get a bunch of bread and meat and cheeses and 2 bottles of Prosecco, which is just, amazing champagne. And we just get on the boat. I'm like, whatever. And so we make our own lunches. We've got our drinks, and it was gorgeous. We got to go to the Blue Grotto and not just look at it. We jumped in and swam because we were on our own time. We could do whatever we wanted. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I swam in the Mediterranean, like who does that? We're going between these rocks and boulders that have been there for thousands of years. And we could see Mount Vesuvius, from our boat. It was like time just paused for a second. It was amazing. I was with 2 girls that I really, really genuinely loved and appreciated. And, I couldn't ask for more. I think that was probably one of the best days of my entire life. And I think that's the memory that I will always take with me.